Ooh, it got very quiet. Good morning, everyone. On behalf of the Edmonton Downtown Business Association, I just want to welcome you all here and thank you all for being here with us. This event is, of course, presented by the Building Owners and Managers Association, BOMA, Edmonton, and the Edmonton Downtown Business Association. My name is Panita McBrien. I'm Executive Director of the Edmonton Downtown Business Association. We are the entity that's in charge of the Downtown Edmonton Business Improvement Area. That goes from 95th Street to about 111th Street and 105th Ave down essentially to the river. We have 1,300 members within those borders, and many of you are here today, and thank you for being here. I'm just going to talk a little bit about who we are and what we do and why that's relevant to today. So we are the lead convener, advocate, and activator of the downtown Edmonton community, shaping downtown Edmonton's future. And we work to support an evolving, inclusive, prosperous, and resilient downtown economy rooted in a remarkable and attractive downtown experience. We can't do any of that if we don't have a safe and vibrant downtown. So that's a really, really essential reason why we partnered with our friends at BOMA Edmonton. So much of what we've all been through over the past couple of years, and when I say we, really it's the business owners and the community, especially residents. It's been an incredibly challenging 2 years. I don't need to tell you that. And the resilience and tenacity that's been exhibited by this community has just amazed me again and again and again. And we hope that today we can offer you some real value in learning what's happening in your community, learning who's here to serve you and support you and help solve your challenges, and hopefully come up with some really exciting new ideas for the future. So collaboration has been an essential part of getting through this past 2 years. I'm really, really proud of our community for some of the partnerships and relationships that have formed and strengthened. And the relationship between the EDBA and BOMA is one of those. So I'm really, really happy to introduce my colleague, wherever she is, Lisa Baroldi.
Thank you, Panita. I think I speak for everyone here when I say that we appreciate your tireless work on behalf of downtown and all the great work that you and your team do in the community. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here. Bienvenue to WOW. My name is Lisa Baroldi. I have the privilege of leading Building Owners and Managers Association of Edmonton. For those of you who don't know, our organization is part of a global network of more than 100 BOMAs that work with and represent an array of people from the boiler room to the boardroom who make commercial buildings happen. So I'm talking about the built environment that makes up our city: retail, office, industrial, multifamily. And in many of these buildings, you've probably seen the BOMA Best Tree logo. This is the industry standard for sustainable building certification. Or you may have heard that BOMA Edmonton is launching the first ever Indigenous Inclusion and Career Development project in commercial real estate. We're proud of the work that we're doing to make our communities better and to elevate the industry, which contributes, is the second largest contributor to our provincial economy. BOMA Edmonton's members are companies big and small. We have 350 corporate members, and they're located north of Red Deer, through the Edmonton region, into northern Alberta and the territories. So we don't just focus on downtown Edmonton, but let me be clear that we do acknowledge the importance of the core as an economic, social, and cultural hub for this geographic area. We also know that safety and vibrancy projects and ideas in one part of the city or in one community could work in other parts, in other cities. So we're really here to exchange ideas and learn from one another. I'm looking forward to listening. I'm looking forward to sharing. There is a lot of good work being done, and we'd like to highlight that. And there's a lot of work yet to do. And so we're really hoping that today we can have some constructive dialogue around new ideas and a way to move forward together. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. So as we gather here today together in this space, it's important for us all to come together in a good way with thoughtful minds, open hearts, and willing hands. I'd like to acknowledge that we are hosting today's discussion on Treaty 6 territory, traditional lands of First Nations and Métis peoples. To help us set our intention for the day and to honor all those who have walked this land, to support those that are walking it today, and to help us steward the land for generations to come, I'm honored to have with us today Maureen Callahoo-Lightfoot to provide our greeting.
Bear with me. Maureen Callahoo-Lightfoot is a Cree Mohawk from the Michael First Nation and has lived her entire life in Treaty 6 territory. Maureen's background is in Aboriginal Child and Family Services, and she has used that background in the field of addiction services and as a home visitor and family support program manager in the Greater St. Albert area. Maureen also provides services as an Indigenous doula to expectant families and is a fierce advocate for parental autonomy during the birthing process. Today, Maureen works as a program coordinator at the Institute for the Advancement of Aboriginal Women. Maureen is very proud to bring nearly 20 years of experience learning from and working with elders and residential school survivors to her work as a blanket exercise facilitator in the Greater Edmonton educational and spiritual community. Maureen lends her life experience as an Indigenous woman and educator to numerous First Nations, Métis, and Inuit communities and organizations within the Sturgeon and Parkland County areas. Within these areas, their goals are to translate reconciliation learnings into reconciliation practices. Maureen considers her learning journey within the Indigenous community to be a great honor and a lifetime endeavor. Please join me in welcoming Maureen.
Good morning, everybody. I hope you can hear me all right. Thank you for having me here on very short notice. It's an honor to be here. When I think of healthy communities, it's something that's extremely close to my heart. As we begin this day, I just ask that you all take a nice deep breath. Let go of the weekend. I know, our weekends are so busy, and we do try to practice self-care on weekends, but quite often, we're also trying to catch up on everything that we can't do during the week. So take a deep breath and just be here today, open-minded, open-hearted. Be here prepared to find solutions and to grow together. My people have walked these lands for generations and generations, and it was a time when everybody knew their place in the community. From whether you were a child or a senior or anything in between, everybody had a job. Everybody had a job. Everybody knew what needed to be done because it was about survival. It was about family, love, and survival. And once upon a time, these newcomers came to this land. And our people embraced them and invited them open-hearted. These people were not used to our harsh conditions, our very cold winters. And we lent the resources and tools to help them survive and be a part of our community. But something went terribly wrong. People became very greedy, and people started to live in silos. And I find this so strange because we need one another. We need one another to live in harmony. When I think of Edmonton, I think of this rich, multicultural city. And I think, how beautiful if we took the time to learn about each other's stories, cultures, resources, shared each other's tools. What a rich community we would be. I am of the mind that every community member deserves to be embraced by their community. I run a program at IAW. It's called Walking in Your Moccasins. And this program is about healthy relationships. Healthy relationships within yourself, your family, your community, the universe, and Mother Earth. And we do talk about a healthy relationship with the community. And the feedback I get from the women that I work with is that they don't feel safe. They feel that they're discriminated against. They feel that they're not treated equally. They feel that there is gender discrimination, culture discrimination. And sometimes going to the mall, going to a shop, going to the bank can be a really scary thing, because right away we're profiled. I can say for myself, if I went into a Walmart, quite often, right away, people are following me, like workers, I mean, and I'm profiled. And it's not a good feeling. It's not a good feeling at all. I came to the city of Edmonton from a farm outside of St. Albert at a young age. I was fresh off the farm at the age of, I think, 18. And right away, my introductory to the city was not a good one. I was definitely harassed. I was definitely bullied. And this wasn't something that was much different from my upbringing, what I experienced in school. And, excuse me, my father is a residential school survivor. And so his world to this day, at the age of, he's turning 86, is still scary. It's still scary for him to go out into the community. And anybody who knows my dad, look him up, Ernie Callahoo, he does so much for the community. He's such a wonderful man. He's the only one who is still living on Michelle Reserve land, because we were enfranchised in 1958, so we don't have a home base anymore. But my dad hung onto his little piece of land, and he's the only member who still lives out there on what he calls his little reserve, his sacred land. And he goes out into the community with me, and he doesn't have a voice. Like, he has a voice, it's in here, but he can't use it here because of what he experienced in residential school. So I'm his voice. I speak for him. And I go out into the community with him, and we've gone to many, many different events. And the subject matter always comes down to community. How do we live as a community, and how do we create a safe community, first of all, for our children, and for again, our seniors and anybody in between. And the only way that we're going to do that is by coming together as one, instead of living in those silos. The last few years have been extremely challenging with COVID. We've lived in isolation. And I've talked to so many people who have, who say that, yes, their mental health is challenged. And when you're a community worker and your mental health is already challenged, it's really difficult. And we do rely on our family and our community and the universe and Mother Earth to help us get through. There's a prophecy. I don't know if anybody has heard the prophecy of the Rainbow Warrior. And the prophecy, it goes like, if all of mankind from all four directions could come together, if all cultures, all colors, all cultures and religions came together, we would be such a strong, rich community, and we could live on in strength and harmony, and we could caretake Mother Earth. And we'd be here for a long, long time. But if we don't do that, and if we continue to discriminate and treat each other like strangers, then the Mother Earth as we know it will no longer exist. So as I said, my hope for the future is that we do come together and that we do embrace one another as community members, and open our hearts, open our minds, use our words for good, use our minds for good, use our ears for good. And spiritually, if we could just connect to one another, I think that this city would be a very, very safe and vibrant place to be. And in honor of my ancestors, I will continue to embrace newcomers. I will embrace every color, every religion, every age. I will embrace you all. And I hope that you will embrace me back. So I'm going to ask for you to take a moment, and I'll just offer a little prayer. And I'd like for you to pray in the way that you know how. Prayer comes from the heart. If you're not of a religious person, that's okay. You can talk to whoever your higher power might be, and that might be maybe a grandmother on the other side. But just pray in the way that you know best. Creator, thank you for bringing us here together today. Thank you for bringing us together as a community. Help us embrace one another. Help us welcome one another. Help us share each other's tools and resources. We thank you for the air we breathe. We thank you for the sunshine that warms us by day. We thank you for the rain that nourishes Mother Earth. We thank you for the two-legged ones. We thank you for the four-legged ones. We thank you for the no-legged ones and the creepy crawly ones too, because they're part of our community as well. We ask that you give us the strength and the know-how to be the best that we can possibly be. And bless everyone in this room, and bless all of those who are struggling out there, who need our support, who are lonely, who are isolated, who are frustrated. Bless us all, Creator. Hi, hi. Thank you, everybody. Enjoy your morning.
Hi, Maureen. That was wonderful. So we have a really incredible lineup for you today. I'm so proud and honored to say that I know all of our speakers personally. And the purpose of today is something that I've been asked a few times. And so I want to just take a minute to look at this. So learn, raise awareness, and collaborate. We can't solve all of the challenges that we've been experiencing downtown with a silver bullet. At this point, I feel like I would sell my soul if that existed. I'm sure many of us would, but it doesn't. And that's been one of the most difficult learnings over the last couple of years, I think, for all of us, that there is no single way forward. There is no one organization, one solution, one type of solution that's going to meet the needs of all of our community members. And so I think what we've done today is compiled a group of people who each play an essential role in serving this community, solving some of these challenges, at least in the short term. And we'll talk a little bit more about the long term, and there are some important voices missing from today, but we're gonna show a couple of videos that I think help set the stage for what the bigger picture needs to be. But we're really, really happy with the group of people that we brought together. So we hope that you're coming with an open, like we talked about, open heart, open mind, and willing hands. We've got a speaker's corner set up out there, which we'll talk a little bit more about a bit later, because we definitely want to hear from you as well. We don't want to just, spend the morning putting out information and leave it at that. So we really do hope that you'll engage with us. There will also be an online engagement opportunity in a little bit. So after the presentations, there's going to be 6 presentations and 2 videos. We're going to break for some conversation out in the foyer. Most of our presenters will have, or some of them, will have resource tables out there, and if not, a lot of them will be able to stick around at least and answer some questions and chat. And then we're going to come back in here and sort of wrap it all up with some next steps and some reflections and some more two-way engagement. So this is our speaker list here. Again, so honored to call all of these folks partners and community members, and both Lisa and I and a lot of our other organizations work really closely with all of our speakers here today, and so we're really thrilled that you have an opportunity to learn from them.
All right, so without further ado, we're going to call up our first speaker. I just want to make a comment. When we do come back from break, we'll be having a bit of a conversation here. Hands up if you notice that we'll be between two ferns. Anyone? Okay. I just thought that was brilliant when I walked in. Our first speaker is Claire McDonald. Claire joins us today from Reach Edmonton, and she serves as a program manager for 24/7 Crisis Diversion and Program Coordinator for RAP-ED. Having worked and volunteered frontline in the nonprofit homeless serving sector for over 15 years, Claire holds a deep appreciation for system collaboration when supporting our most vulnerable citizens. Without a strong, coordinated effort, we miss opportunities to assist our community members with growth and healing. Claire has a background in public relations and addictions counseling and has spent many years in facilitation and training roles. She is passionate about developing the skills of others so they are confident in supporting our vulnerable community through any challenges they may face. She proudly works with Reach Edmonton Council in its efforts to collaborate with community partners to make our city a safer place for all its citizens. Since coming on board with the 24/7 Crisis Diversion Program 2.5 years ago, Claire has been working on strengthening the collaboration, enhancing protocols, developing and managing a new data collection system, and navigating the pressures that COVID-19 and the opioid overdose crisis have put on our program. Please join me in welcoming Claire.
Hi. Well, you can't see anybody from here.
It's kind of great, isn't it?
Right? Okay. So like they said, I'm Claire McDonald, and I'm the program manager for the 24/7 Crisis Diversion teams. Let's see. Oh, there we go. So our partnership is a collaboration with Canadian Mental Health Association, Hope Mission, and Boyle Street Community Services. We also work very closely with the Edmonton Police Services, Alberta Health Services, our city's peace officers as well. And our program is funded through the City of Edmonton. So a primary outcome of our initiative is to divert inappropriate non-emergency calls away from 911. And we are not considered an emergency service, however. We do work to address downtown and citywide safety challenges through different levels of care for the folks that we support. It starts with crisis diversion, so we go out to dispatch calls and we determine what kind of support is needed by the individuals that we engage with. That sometimes results in a need for supportive transportation. For those who need and request it, we transport them to a safer space, whether that be a formal agency or hospital or another space within the city or private residences. When we get out to those folks and we offer transportation, we aim to connect them with the services that they need by walking them into those agencies, using our relationships with those agencies to help with the intake process. Emergency shelter continues to be the main place where we're able to take folks to. It represents about 80% of the warm handoffs that we provide. One of the challenges that our team does run into, as I know other teams do as well, is the lack of available spaces to transport folks to, especially after hours, and especially in the cases where we've engaged with folks with serious complex needs. A shout out goes to our team and our staff who work within our program, whose compassion and advocacy and creativity help navigate any system barriers that our folks face. There. In 2021, the 24/7 crisis diversion teams responded to a total of 17,046 dispatched calls, and we engaged with over 20,000 individuals in instances of general support. General support is considered proactive engagement that we do during program downtime. So in between dispatch calls, our teams have the ability to roam in areas where they know folks spend time. We're able to stop and engage with them to see if there's any way that we can support. It's been during this program downtime and during these general engagements that we've been able to spot folks in active overdose and been able to provide life-saving support. So far in 2022, this has happened 72 times. There has been a noticeable need for general support in our city, especially with the nicer weather. There's more folks outside, and the crisis diversion teams work to connect with those people as much as we can. We also spend time in the transit centers supporting peace officers as well, as there's been an increase of folks there as well. Throughout the pandemic, our teams were able to support COVID transportation for our vulnerable folks. We noticed that there was a gap in available services for those who had COVID, who needed to get testing, or who had symptoms. And we had our staff eagerly step up to fill this gap. We provided over 1,200 transports to and from the COVID isolation facility for our vulnerable folks. So our teams respond to calls 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. Hope Mission operates in decommissioned ambulances, and Boyle Street operates in Dodge Caravans. Our teams do not have any weapons or any tactical training at all. There's no safety equipment that separates them from the folks that they support in transportation. So we are not able to transport individuals who are overly aggressive or potentially violent. We're also unable to force folks to leave areas. We will go out, we'll connect with them, we'll engage with them and build a relationship and see if we can offer support that includes transportation, but we can't force them to accept that help. One of the biggest challenges that our program faces is managing the demand for support with only a small fleet of vehicles. Hope Mission and Boyle Street operate 3 vehicles each during a 24-hour period. Between the hours of 3 p.m. and 1 a.m., we have 4 vehicles in total on the road. Between 1 p.m. and 3 p.m. and 1 a.m. and 3 a.m., we have 3 vehicles in total on the road, and the remaining time we have 2. We are really excited about a motion being brought forward by City Council to look at scaling up our program, to increase our program capacity on the roads, to be able to get out to more folks, and to be able to reduce wait times for us to get out there. Okay. So the 24/7 Crisis Diversion Program is the only publicly accessible program that can support community and businesses 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That means that anybody can call us for support for our vulnerable folks in our city. Over 70% of our referrals come through the 211 Press 3 crisis diversion line. Emergency services like EPS, EMS, our peace officers, as well as our fire service, have a direct link to our teams, our mobile teams on the road, without having to go through 211. About 17% of our referrals so far in 22 have come through emergency services. We do still triage all calls that come through, so whether they're from emergency services or through 211, and those folks who are at greater risk to come to harm without intervention are the ones that we try to get to first. Our program works alongside many important initiatives within the city, such as the HELP team and the COT team, our encampment response team, and many of our city's outreach programs as well, because we're often supporting the same folks to ensure their safety and well-being. Those programs have their referrals come within the programs internally, and our program is able to support the external referrals from community and businesses and the individuals themselves. There. So a little bit about our 211 partner. 211 is an accredited information and referral service that was launched in 2006. People are able to connect with them through phone, text, or live chat, and it connects them to a wide range of supports that they might need. That includes basic needs, financial assistance, anything that they might need. They receive approximately 75,000 contacts every year. Uh-oh. I don't know what I did. Okay, so I'll keep going if it comes up. Yes, okay, so the 211 Press 3 line, 211 hosts that for us, and it accesses the 24/7 crisis diversion program at 211. This represents only about 25 to 30% of all contacts coming in for 211. Pressing 3 actually allows for priority routing to allow for calls to be answered quicker during times of high demand and high need. They provide that public access for triage and dispatch to our mobile teams 24 hours a day. A little bit of stats from last year. In 2021, 211 answered just under 30,000 calls on the crisis diversion line alone, with a peak day seeing as many as 133 calls. Our program aims to answer calls at a 211 level within 90 seconds. However, times of extreme weather greatly impact that wait time, as do the needs of the city that they might be accessing 211 for other reasons. So something that we're excited about, since the fall of 2021, the Crisis Diversion Program partners have been working to develop more clarity and consistency in our response within the city. We're excited that we're now embarking on a developmental evaluation that will take place over the next 4 months, and it's really going to focus on 2 areas. So understanding the magnitude and the complexity of the calls coming in to the 211 crisis diversion line, and also discovering ways to strengthen the consistency in the mobile team response to calls. Findings from the evaluation will help inform ongoing improvements to our program, and it's our hope that it'll provide clarity into the complex needs of the folks that we see in our city. We're hoping that we can use this as advocacy to increase our program capacity, but also increase the services within the community as well to better support our vulnerable citizens. Over the next few months, our program will also be looking at ways to diversify our practice to ensure that the needs of the folks that we're supporting are met in ways that acknowledge their individual identities. Oh, Brett, I'm calling you up really early. Okay, so a big thank you goes out to everybody who supports our program. If you have any questions about the program, you can reach out to me by phone or email anytime. And if you're looking for more information about our program and our staff, we have some staff profiles up there as well on our website, so you can check that out. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Thank you, Claire, for that presentation. It was very enlightening. Some of those statistics are pretty mind-blowing, so it's incredible work that you and the team are doing. We're looking forward to working more closely with the REACH Crisis Diversion team. Everyone in the room can actually visit them out in the foyer when we break for some networking. Our next speaker is from the city of Edmonton, and I'd like to just take a moment to thank the city for contributing to today's event, which we hope will be the first of many. It is my pleasure to now introduce Brett Latchford. Brett Latchford is the acting director of Downtown Vibrancy and Safe City. Before taking on this role in May of this year, he worked as the program manager on the Community Safety and Wellbeing Framework. In his 7 years with the city, he has held strategy and planning positions in community services, urban planning and economy, and financial and corporate services within the city. Prior to working with the city, he was the senior manager for planning and performance at the Alberta Gaming and Liquor Commission, and prior to that, he worked for 15 years in the financial services sector. Brett graduated from Wilfrid Laurier University with a degree in economics and holds certifications in risk management and project management. Originally from London, Ontario, Brett has called Edmonton home since 2008 and is happily married with 2 children, ages 5 and 3. Welcome to the stage, Brett.
Thank you. That biography sounded great. I'm not sure if it was me or not. So I am the acting director for Downtown Vibrancy and Safe City, and I'm here today to talk about the Community Safety and Wellbeing Framework. There is a trick to this. But first I want to talk about the Downtown Core Transit and Safety Plan. So as many of you are aware, there was a request from the provincial government to provide a plan, and so the city did that. Community safety is central to the quality of life for residents of any city. Everyone should feel secure and confident to walk city streets, to ride public transit, to explore any community in Edmonton. Edmonton has created the Downtown Core and Transit Safety Plan, and it is available on the city's website. The plan involves tangible action on several components of community safety across 5 categories: law enforcement and disorder deterrence, community and individual health, housing and houselessness supports, transit safety and passenger comfort, and clean and vibrant public spaces. Many of these actions are already complete and more are currently underway. Putting this plan of action into action requires intentional partnerships, coordinated efforts of the City of Edmonton, other orders of government, agencies, industries, downtown employers, landowners, and Edmontonians. The Community Safety and Wellbeing Framework is not the greatest visual. However, as you take this in, I'd like to let you know that this is the framework structure that was presented at Council. Each pillar relies on co-creation and engagement with community stakeholders. We spoke with over 80 organizations, in many cases multiple times, to test our outcomes. All of these pillars need to work in tandem. There are many, many intersection points, and this is a visual representation of something that is really a big weave and a mess if you try to draw it out. We applied a human-centered approach to all of this work, and in the development of this framework, we're cognizant that it needs to resonate on every political spectrum in order to affect change and receive support, whether that support is monetary or otherwise. Community safety and well-being is an evolving space, and this framework will ground our conversation, but it is not the only conversation. Council approved this framework on May 24th. So what are we still working on? So the framework itself was approved as a high-level concept, logic models, and the framework itself, but there's a lot more work to be done. The city is working on implementing large parts of our approved plan, and we'll get into some of those actions on the next slides, but this plan crosses all departments in city administration and is driving a lot of the work that we are doing. One of the things we're really excited about for community safety and well-being is the dashboard. It's due to be completed in Q4, and we're hoping that not only does it help us celebrate our successes where we've achieved our goals, but identifies areas where more work or adjustments need to be made, or maybe we even need to rethink components of our plan. It will also help us track external factors and change the playing field, whether that be social, economic, or otherwise. The plan itself is a set of living documents, and to reach our goals, we need to ensure that we continually monitor and look for gaps. We need to ensure our pacing and the pacing of the community are aligned and efficient, and where necessary, we may need to change the plan. Logic models are built on a set of assumptions, and sometimes those assumptions prove incorrect or tenuous. We want to identify where that's the case as early as possible so we can make the necessary adjustments. Council is also coming into a budget cycle, so we have a 4-year budget coming up in the fall that will be debated at Council. This is an opportunity for Council to apply their wisdom and experience. It's an opportunity for administration to draw on that wisdom and experience, and it's an opportunity for us to plan what we need going forward. We need the plan to be nimble and adaptive to reflect the decisions and the processes that Council will make. In the case of community safety and well-being, we've got a plan. It's really nimble, and it allows us to have discussions with Council and a framework that guides our decisions going forward. This is worse than my TV remote. So what's working well? So now that the framework's in place, let's talk about some stuff that we've actually accomplished. So we've provided more resources for Chinatown, including $300,000 directly invested for safety, with a further $1 million in a Chinatown Vibrancy Fund that's very similar to the Downtown Vibrancy Fund. The framework also included $1.5 million for microgrants. Microgrants allow city administration to be nimble in response to issues, or to seize quickly opportunities that arise without the need to go back to Council. This money is spent at the city manager's discretion. We've increased funding for extreme weather response. We're advancing work with EPS on the integrated call center. The social development branch is implementing the Indigenous framework. We provided $1 million to get started on the Indigenous led shelter, sorry. More supplies were approved for the drug poisoning response. We've provided $415,000 for greater training for peace officers, and we funded a bridge healing center. So what isn't working? So when I was asked to speak, I was asked to list some stuff that isn't working well. Our plan is an address of all the things that weren't working well, the conversations that we were having, the ad hoc responses, and the very responsive nature. So the plan is still fresh. It was only approved on May 24th. And so rather than talk about the things that aren't working well, as it's so new, I'd like to talk about some of the risks that we've seen coming forward. So my background is in economics. I can't recall a time when so many of the economic indicators that are in place are sort of sitting on the fence. They could go either way. We've got rising inflation, we've got rising interest rates, we've got housing costs, but for Alberta, we also have rising oil and gas, which is generally good for the economy here. Having said that, we don't know which way it's going to go, so we have to monitor that and see where those things take us. We also have changing social conditions. So people are returning to the office space, some are returning via hybrid work. There's greater income stratification, there's changes to interprovincial migration, and there's demands for even greater climate resiliency. And finally, COVID. Will COVID come back? Will it come back in a variant that requires further lockdowns or increased spending on health infrastructure? And how will that change our future? We've co-created a lot of solutions with the community, and we've built on existing initiatives that work. So we've identified gaps, and we think we've prepared risk mitigations to address all of these concerns. We've strengthened the relationships that we have with the community. We've aligned ourselves with our partners. We have a clear vision in the framework, and we've made the conversation easier to have, both internally and externally with council. I truly believe that whatever happens, whatever comes next, any of those risks, that we're ready and willing to address it, and Edmonton can handle it. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Brett. And I just want to echo Lisa's thanks to the city for being a funding partner of this event and for all of the partnership work that we're able to do together. I found a lot of open doors, and they've heard a lot of venting from me over the past couple of years. So Brett is often on the receiving end of that. So next we're going to play a video. I sort of alluded to this at the beginning of the day. As we reflected on what we wanted to share today and what we wanted to open up for conversation, mental health and mental illness wasn't something that we could leave out. As you're going to hear, I'm sure, from Inspector Crisp later today, an overwhelming majority of police calls are actually mental health and mental illness related calls. Certainly that's a role that REACH plays. And as Claire talked about, a huge part of the problem is that even if we have outreach, even if we have police response, whatever it is, our system is not equipped and not set up to care for folks who are in a state of crisis, psychosis, whatever it might be. And so this is a really big piece of the puzzle here. And the best way to sort of paint this picture, I thought, and hopefully you'll agree, was to share this video with you. So it is an 8-minute talk. It's right on theme with what we're doing today. So this is John Snook. John Snook serves as Executive Director of the Treatment Advocacy Center. They are widely recognized as one of the most influential mental health advocacy organizations in existence today in the United States. So just keep in mind during his comments, so a lot of it is obviously in an American context, but every point he made I felt just rang so true for our current situation here at home. So he spoke in 2019 at the International Downtown Association conference. We're a member of the International Downtown Association, of course, and it's a really, really brilliant gathering of minds on these issues every year. So this is only a couple years old. In COVID years, it's basically last year, and I hope you'll find it as relevant and thought-provoking as we did.
Recently, my cousin had a stroke. She was 25 at her first job in DC when she felt a splitting headache and that telltale numbness. She was able to tell her coworker what was happening before she passed out. Now, many of you in this room are no doubt been educated about strokes. You understand that time is of the essence. You may have even heard the slogan, "Time lost is brain lost." And so my cousin was rushed to the emergency room. She had surgery, and a team was arrayed around her. Neuropsychologists, speech therapists, occupational therapists, counselors. The goal was to prevent brain damage and get her back to where she was, to help her recover. I'm happy to say that story has a happy ending. She's recovering, looking forward to a long and healthy life. That same week, Carrie McBride contacted me. Carrie's son also has a brain disorder. But the difference is in how our society cared for her son versus my cousin is why I'm here before you today. Carrie's son has schizophrenia. While he was at the University of Virginia, he began to have paranoid delusions. He was convinced that other students were following him, that his professors were conspiring against him. He called his mother, asking her why she had started to work with the FBI against her. Carrie was a career State Department employee, so the logic was somewhat there. Carrie was devastated. Science now tells us that Carrie's son was in the midst of a psychotic episode. And that psychosis is just as toxic to the brain as a stroke. But rather than array a team to help him, rather than get him urgent care, our system sets up barriers to prevent help. Carrie was told that even though he was obviously psychotic, even though he was hiding from the FBI, unless he volunteered for care, she couldn't help him. She was told, well, hopefully he acts out and he's violent, because then he'll get arrested and he'll get some help that way. Carrie's son deteriorated and eventually became homeless. And as you all in this room know, the conversation changes when you become homeless. Her son was no longer a promising college student at UVA with a medical emergency. He was a homeless man. And so the conversation became, well, he can't get treatment unless he's going to starve to death or freeze to death on the streets. It took years before Carrie was able to get him treatment. Once she finally was able to get him hospitalized, after a few months, she said it was like a light switch went off. He recovered, regained his insight, understood he needed care, and was able to participate back in their lives again. But he had lost years to our outdated system. Years where his brain was struggling with untreated psychosis. My name is John Snook, and I run the Treatment Advocacy Center. We exist to make his story the same as my cousin's. So how do we do that? How do we turn the conversation into incentivizing treatment so that we don't take for granted that there's just people on our streets? And I know you're frustrated. I know you see people every day who are obviously ill, that you don't need to be a doctor to understand that they need care, but they aren't getting it. Folks that are cycling in and out over and over again, not getting the treatment they need, but taking huge amounts of resources in crisis. And I know you're frustrated being told you just don't understand the homeless crisis. You just don't understand what needs to be done. So I would tell you, you do understand that we need to be treating that sort of person like it was a medical illness. So where do we start? We have to start at the basics. Unfortunately, our society didn't take serious mental illness seriously for a long time. As a result, we decimated our treatment options. We've lost literally thousands of treatment beds across the country. We have fewer beds today per capita than we did in 1850. But people don't stop getting sick just because there's nowhere to care for them. They fall to the systems that can't say no. Our homeless shelters, our jails, our emergency rooms. And if you talk to any law enforcement officer, they will tell you that they are overwhelmed by people with mental illness. In almost every state in the union today, there's more people with mental illness in a jail or a prison than there is in the largest treatment facility in that state. We did a study last year with the National Sheriff's Association. We found that police officers spend a fifth of their time and nearly $1 billion a year just transporting and responding to mental health calls. And I challenge you to find one police officer that says any of that money is well spent, that any of that is anything but a waste of resources. But unfortunately, our system has incentivized law enforcement to become our mental health responders. That's how we get these chronic cycles of people who, by no fault of their own, become homeless on our streets and can't get help. Law enforcement will tell you that we get called to the scene because the law says you can't do anything until the person's dangerous to himself or somebody else. And you stop to think about that. We don't do that with anything. You've probably all heard that people with serious mental illness are no more dangerous than anyone else. So why do we have a standard for care that requires you to be dangerous? Why is Carrie's son wasting away simply because he isn't violent? Instead, we should treat mental illness like any other illness and say, if you're in need of medical care and you aren't able to understand you need treatment, we're able to step in. That's what we do for any other illness, and that's what we should do for mental illness. We should eliminate that dangerousness stigma. We also have to change the incentives that allow serious mental illness to fall through the cracks. You all know this as well as anyone because you see the results of these disincentives. Right now, treatment providers aren't paid anymore to help someone who's seriously mentally ill, someone who's scary or dangerous that might make a headline. They don't get any more money to help that person. Our systems aren't set up to recognize that one person might go to the ER 17 times, the jail another 10 times, and bounce in and out of hospitals over and over again. It just isn't set up to prioritize that person's care. And as a result, we waste millions of dollars. In almost every city in this room, I can guarantee you there's at least a half dozen, if not 100 people that you're spending millions of dollars on every year without them getting any better. They're just cycling in and out of your most expensive systems. Thankfully, cities are starting to step up. In New York City, the public advocate recently announced a groundbreaking plan. The recommendations would completely remove law enforcement from mental health response. Mayor de Blasio announced a 30-day review after an incident of their most important program, Kendra's Law, which provides care to this most seriously ill population on a consistent basis. In San Francisco, Mayor Breed's Urgent Cares SF would introduce 1,000 more hospital beds to their system and revitalize that same program, their version of Kendra's Law. Even the federal government is getting in the mix. I don't have to tell you that the federal government simply didn't care about mental illness for decades. There's a host of examples, but the most important one is that for years, Medicaid was simply not allowed to pay for psychiatric care in a hospital. For no reason other than they didn't want to. Is it any wonder why we don't have any hospital beds left? But thankfully, at the end of the Obama administration, and then taken up by the Trump administration, there's been a change to that rule. And now the federal government will pay states to revitalize that treatment system, to bring community care and treatment beds back to where it should be. And I would tell every downtown association in this room that you should be demanding that your state go after that money. It's money to stabilize your system, bring people the care that they need, and treat mental illness like any other illness. Because the reality is, we're never going to train our way out of this problem, and we're never going to be able to house our way out of this problem until we help people get the care they need. So this change is called the IMD exclusion, and you can go to our website, treatmentadvocacycenter.org/IMD, to get more information. There's a lot to do. We finally have the opportunity to make change. And I'm thankful for all of you for sitting in this room and listening, because that's how we get things going. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Punita, for sharing that video with us. Just by round of applause, how many people have learned something new here today or have a new idea? Great. And there's more in store. So it is my pleasure to introduce our next two speakers, Sean Kirk and Damien Radcliffe. Sean has risen in progressive roles in the property management industry for over 15 years, spanning 4 regional shopping centers and office assets in the Edmonton area. Joining the Edmonton City Centre team as general manager in August 2018, he has effectively led the team through an extended sale transition to the current ownership that was finalized in November 2019. With a focus on team culture, leadership, and efficiency, he collaborates with his team to ensure they provide best-in-class service and expertise to all of Edmonton City Centre's stakeholders. Sean has been heavily involved in collaborations with industry and community organizations such as BOMA, the DBA, and the Downtown Recovery Coalition to advocate for a more vibrant and exciting downtown. Damien spent 14 years as a member of the Canadian Armed Forces as an armament and explosives technician. During this period, he was deployed multiple times overseas on anti-human trafficking, anti-piracy, and force protection missions, and domestically in support of drug interdiction and aid to civil power operations. While a member of the NATO Anti-Human Trafficking Task Force, he received a letter of recognition for his contribution to a mission. After leaving the military, Damien ran his own private security company, which specialized in event and close protection. His experience included music festivals that hosted up to 30,000 people, foreign delegations, politicians, and Bollywood superstars, also agricultural societies, weddings, and construction sites. This experience led to Damien being hired as the regional security manager for a major property management firm. During that time, he oversaw the security program development and operational standards for all security operations in Northern Alberta. In this role, he served as a member of the company's National Security Steering Committee and was responsible for the procurement of security services in Western Canada. Damien holds a certificate in security management from the University of Calgary and the Certified Protection Professional designation with ACES. Last fall, he began working on his Master of Science in International Security and Risk Management. Please join me in welcoming Sean and Damien to the stage.
Podium?
I got this. I'll put my notes here though.
Yeah, okay. Well, thank you. Good morning, and thanks for having us. For the next few minutes, we're going to talk about how we've changed our security strategy as a result of the environment that we're in today. After the pandemic, well, I guess we're still in the pandemic, but the pandemic, the opioid crisis, we also have a difference, changing in societal expectations. The houseless population more than doubled over this period. And of course, the aggression that we see from our teams, or to our teams, is increasing at an alarming rate. Because of these situations, we have decided to, or it forced us really to change the way we do security on site. And as a result, we've created partnerships for that. So we've had an amazing partnership with Paladin over the last few years, and they have been open-minded to changing how we interact with our community. And it's such a valuable partnership and the open-mindedness of it, that we were able to bring in a third partnership, which is the Boyle Street Community Services, to try to change the type of interactions we have through the partnership and the addition and the integration of social services.
Sean alluded to, we've been working on, can you guys hear me okay? Is this thing on? Good? Okay. As Sean alluded, we've been working on multiple different training programs and trialing things over the last little while, and though many of them are different in scope, the aim is the same. And that's teaching our staff to understand, to train with, and to utilize the most powerful weapon that we have in public safety and in security industry itself, which is empathy. Learning to understand and empathize with someone and understanding the scenario that they are in, or at least trying to understand that, gives us an opportunity to open some common ground and to have increase the percentage of positive outcomes of all the interactions we have. Over the last, I guess it would be, month or so? Month or so. We've really started working towards trying to get this program accredited through one of our local partners, because it's not just important for Paladin to do it, it's actually important for our entire industry to do it. If you're in the public safety industry, whether it's police, ETS, law enforcement, whatever any kind of law enforcement, whatever it is, this is an important tool for us to use. And it's important for us to keep pushing forward on these initiatives. Having taken we actually helped build the Compassionate Action Program. Has anyone heard of it? If anyone has heard of it, yeah, there's a few people who've heard of it. And this is a really interesting program. It's a very difficult program because it helps us to identify our personal traumas and our personal biases. And that's kind of a tough thing to do. But it's an important part of that, is to understanding those biases and those traumas is kind of the foundation that we build empathy off of.
Another very important training session that we provide is a cultural sensitivity training. This training is led by an Indigenous instructor. The purpose of this program is to take a look at cultural and generational trauma, as well as personal and cultural biases. And it's been a great tool in ensuring that our teams see different cultures at a different light. I can say that everyone that takes it comes out very different.
The reality is the world's changed. And we as an industry, and especially in the public safety realm, we need to change with it. And we've been working through developing these programs, but at the end of the day, we need to change mindsets, create new mindsets, create new ways of dealing with things. And that's what we've committed our training deployment model to, is trying to create these mindsets, to change it for the better, and to increase percentages of positive outcomes.
Am I pressing the right button?
Yeah. Am I in the way?
So I point at you? Damon's in the way.
Yeah, it happens.
Okay, so what works? From our perspective, specifically at the shopping center, we know that through experience, presence does work. Whenever we ramp up our security presence, we do see an increase in statistics, but we do see a change in what's going on in the shopping center. And it really is it's designed to be more of a deterrence type of program. What we're trying to do is ensuring that we've got more security people throughout the shopping center so that it defers some of the behaviors that are not welcoming within the shopping center and the type of behaviors that scare people. Sorry. So the idea is not, we know we can't arrest our way out of it, so we know that the presence is there to try to deter it, is basically what I'm saying. The second portion of that is our partnerships. So the partnership with Paladin in order to create a different type of security initiative. but also the new partnerships that we've had with Boyle Street. So right now, we're working with Boyle Street on 2 different projects, and we're going to be integrating a new one in the next few weeks. The first one, of course, is the washroom with tenant program. We were seeing some significant problems in our washrooms, so we brought in this program. Initially, it was a 1-month pilot project. Immediately we started to see a reduction in the types of behaviors and actions happening in the washrooms, which has now made it much more safe and welcoming for our tenants and customers. Since then, we've actually increased our contract by 6 months. So this is going to be a long-term type of partnership with Boyle Street. The second is we've got an opioid prevention team that is in the Pedway systems, and we're part of that program. And in its short tenure that it's been operating, the amount of interactions that this team has had with our community has been staggering. And whether it's just having a conversation to having to dealing with or providing medical services, medical supplies, hygiene supplies, and referrals to social programs, we feel that it's been well worth the money and well worth the trial. And because of the success of that program, we're adding 2 more outreach workers that are going to integrate into the security patrols. And so this is an opportunity for us to have a layered type of interactions with our community, as well as a learning opportunity between both organizations. Now, these programs are in their infancy. We know that we've got a lot to learn yet. We've already made some changes as a result of some of the learnings we've had initially. But we have a lot of faith in these programs. So, so with success has also come challenges. And some of our challenges are this. So at the core, we know that our program, being a private entity program, is really just displacing the problem. There's even adding the empathy portion of it to change the interactions, bringing in the social services to help out. There's only so much happens on our site. So we know that, we know that all we're doing is displacing. We're kind of pushing people around a little bit into different areas, to different organizations. Secondly, the costs. We're kind of the first through the wall, so everything's going to be a little bit more expensive. It's definitely costly. And there's also a lot of learnings. But we're dedicated to this process. We're dedicated to the learnings, and we're going to try to find efficiencies so that the program becomes more sustainable in the long run.
The challenges to doing this kind of thing is seemingly endless, but the 2 biggest ones that I've kind of noticed while working through this, Sean and I have been working through this for the last couple of years together, and I had been doing work similar to this in my previous role for the last probably 8 years or so. But the 2 biggest ones, one is there seems to have been a transference of accountability for the safety and security of public spaces from the public sector, which historically it's at, to the private sector. And the other issue is that we're running into the ceiling of what private security services can do to fill the gap or the void that we're currently seeing in our public services. So in this, in our current situation, like our clients, my clients, I have a large portfolio in the downtown core, are having to pay a ton of money to try and provide safety and security in their properties individually, whether it's in increased security costs, whether it's building damage, equipment damage, or even reputational damage. Getting that reputation that place isn't a good place to go, that place to go. So that's a very difficult part to be in. And as was alluded to earlier, as we go through this social experiment of having people returning from suburbia downtown and starting to work and interact with each other in these environments again, that can be a pretty daunting place to be. So this has led to a real sharp increase in demand for my services and our services in the security industry. I don't know if there's any of my colleagues here today. But also it's expanded the expectation of what we can do. It's far outstripped what the actual Security Services Investigators Act allows us to do. We're at the very ceiling of that. And with some of the changes in models and some of the different funding that's been going on, we're struggling to help our clients fill that void. And that's where we need the city to kind of step in and help deal with that. So either we need to increase the legislative capabilities of private security, or we need to fund more social support programs, more medical infrastructure to deal with mental health, addictions, lifestyle, mental health, addictive, and high-risk lifestyles, and more police. I lost my spot there. Should have made the font bigger. I'm getting old.
Yeah.
Go ahead. It's you now, actually. That's why I lost my spot.
Yeah. Make that font bigger. This would be 12 pages long. It was hard to get it down to 8 minutes, by the way. We also know there's a difference in goals with different organizations, and we've heard this before, even from EPS themselves. You know, we have an issue we have issues that are happening on our streets and our sidewalks right beside our building, and we know that from a business perspective, we want these issues dealt with, but from an organizational perspective with EPS, they're not generally looking for the low-level crime. They're trying 3 levels up to try to disrupt a larger force. And even when we make an arrest on site, we know that there's a lack of places for these individuals to be taken to, which creates a situation where police or just in general, individuals are getting dropped off. And we see the same people coming back doing the same behaviors over and over and over again. And that's unsustainable. It's frustrating, and it's a cycle that needs to be broken.
I think at the core of this, and I think like we're sort of collectively moving towards this, I believe, is that we all have to make a decision whether we're going to continue to treat addictions and mental health as criminal activity or as a medical condition. That is at the core and fundamentally what this is. Because right now, often what happens is when there's issues that deal with this, it's kind of seen, well, that's a police problem. No, it's a society problem. We all have to deal with this. The behaviors that result of when you're in crises from, as Mr. Snook alluded to there earlier, the behaviors involved when you're in mental health crisis or in, some type of addiction trauma is unnerving and sometimes violent. Where most of us are conditioned that when we see those situations, we call the police and we expect a response. But now we've set up an interesting dynamic because it's not really a great situation for either party to be in. The person in crisis is looking for care, attention. They require medical support. The officer responding, their mandate is to enforce the Criminal Code of Canada under the legislation given to them, the powers that we've agreed to let them have to keep the peace. So therefore, when they get there, I don't think we're going to let them say, no, not my department, and drive away. So when they get there, they have to deal with it. And to do that, they have to find the criminal activity within that behavior in order to do that, as Mr. Snook again alluded to. And once that interaction starts, the outcome can be catastrophic and damaging for the officer, the individual in crisis, and society at large. We kind of believe that, Sean and I have talked about this a lot over the last couple of years, but we need to take a more layered approach. And it needs to be a more combined layered approach to this. We need to have more support structure on the street. Things like the diversion team. There's things out there that they don't walk, talk, or look like police, because sometimes the uniform itself, right? They're actually designed, by design, they create a visual escalation. That's what uniforms are for. And if you've had a negative interaction with, public safety agencies or police before, that may escalate the situation itself. So these non-uniformed sort of roles need to be increased within our community. But they need to know when to escalate, because police shouldn't be shut out. They're part of the solution. We just need to give more support so they can do their job correctly and assist where they need to. So we need to layer more of those things in. And that's got to come through some more unity of the funding models from the federal, provincial, and municipal government. Because what's happening now, from an outsider looking in, and happy to chat if someone can correct me on this, it appears that with the competitiveness for funding in this province and in the city and in this country, often our agencies that are supporting are competing against each other for the same money and are unable to collaborate as good as we'd hope they would be able to be. That doesn't help the situation. That puts us in a difficult spot, puts those supported networks in spot, the police officers in a bad spot, private security and property managers and residents in general in a bad place. Ultimately, we need to get back to what the very definition of community is and why we actually started living together in communities, and that is to care for and protect for each other. So we feel that we're taking kind of the lead on this, and we're hoping that we can find some partners to join us on this path and move forward to find a better way, advocate to our public officials to be able to have a more unified funding model so that we can get the necessary supports for mental health and addictions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, John.
Thank you so much, Sean and Damien. I'm so fortunate, both Lisa and I think would say this, to work with these two and their teams and learn from them all the time. Sorry, bear with me for a moment here. I don't have to do clickers, but I do need to flip pages. I'm going to introduce our next speaker. EPS has been referenced several times today, so really honored that Acting Inspector David Crisp was available to join us. Acting Inspector David Crisp began his policing career 21 years ago in central London, England. David was quickly exposed to many aspects of policing a largely underprivileged and diverse community located in Tower Hamlets Borough. The mix of different cultures, ethnicities, and socioeconomic diversity allowed him to begin understanding the unique needs of various communities. After meeting a young lady from Fort Saskatchewan, David emigrated to Edmonton in 2008 before joining EPS. After having risen to the rank of sergeant in England, David found himself as a recruit in training school, relearning the basics of policing, but also experiencing the difference in policing in North America compared to the UK. David has spent time in patrol, intelligence, investigations, information management, and as a downtown watch commander before joining Community Safety and Wellbeing Bureau in 2019. David is currently responsible for EPS's social response branch, and this branch of the EPS focuses on taking a human-centered approach, balancing public safety with the increased well-being of community members they interact with. The social response branch consists of the human-centered engagement liaison partnership. You've heard HELP a few times today. We talk about the HELP unit a lot. That's what that is, the human-centered engagement liaison partnership, crime and trauma-informed support services, and the police and crisis team. So that's CTSS and PACT. All three of these units work with external partners, including AHS addictions and mental health therapists, social navigators, and specialists in trauma-related care. Please come up to the stage, Inspector Crisp. I've been so fortunate, again, to learn so much from this unit, and honored that you could join us today.
Well, thank you very much for having me here today, and you really can't see anyone, so that's different. So for the presentation today, let's see if this works. Okay. For the presentation today, I would like to introduce the HELP program, showcase our 2021 evaluation, and then provide, and then also give an overview of the recommendations we took from that evaluation and the way we're moving forwards in 2022. So just begin with the structure of the HELP program is an integrated partnership between police and social navigators. On the bottom right-hand side, you'll see all of our partners that we have contractual relations with, and we contract our social navigators through these agencies. The goals of the program are to reduce demand on the frontline police services. We understand that many of those individuals who come to our attention often have many underlying basic or social determinants of health that are not being met. And what we hope within this program is by allowing the police officer to ensure public safety, and creating a safe environment, it allows the navigators to work their magic and navigate those community members, those vulnerable and marginalized community members, to the appropriate services, and therefore keeping them out of the justice system where possible. So I've spoken a little bit about how we do business, but I just want to explore a little bit more about the methodology of the program, and that it's a voluntary program. At this point, I'll give you a real-life scenario of something that my team might come across. So let's say, for example, there is an individual who's going through a crisis in an intersection. Patrol will be called, as police are always called to the scene of those types of events, and on attending, perhaps they come across an individual who's going through some type of crisis. What we ask our patrol members to do at that point is to ensure the public safety, make sure there's no criminal elements at play here. And then once that's done, take a second and think about why that person's at the scene and why they're going through that situation. On doing so, and if the situation's appropriate, they would put a referral into our help unit. And that's when you've probably seen, I hope you've seen, the vehicles. And they will dispatch to the scene and actually take that community member off the patrol member and hopefully keep them out of the justice system. So with that, I'm going to jump into the evaluation and just show you some of the work we've done. Oh, it happens for me. Awesome. Okay, so in 2021, we took nearly 900 referrals from our front line. This is an internal program only. Just because of capacity, we do not have the resources to be able to take referrals from the community. The vast majority of our referrals, of course, come from downtown division, and that won't surprise anyone. But on average, we are case managing our clients for up to approximately 2 months. Now, at this point, I just want to give you a little bit more information about this. We pride ourselves on being data-driven. So what essentially we've done is we've quantified much of our police data, and it allows us to identify those individuals who come to police attention for social disorder-related occurrences, and they're the individuals we're trying to keep out of the justice system, the arrest, incarcerate, release cycle. We know that many of them, on the right-hand side you'll see, have addictions and mental health underlying conditions that have caused them to be homeless. We're a case management system, so therefore we do keep people onboarded once a community member comes to our attention, and if we are going to onboard that individual for case management, there's quite a referral process that takes place. And the important thing to note at this point is that we don't give up on that individual. We don't accept no's for an answer, and because we're also a government agency, the feedback I've received is that it's easier for us to access some of those government resources. So, for example, Alberta Works or some of the resources in the correctional centres. And on the bottom left there is just a demonstration of the amount of occurrences that the community members interact with the police. So, for example, the people referred to help, so those 889, generated 4,450 police occurrences in the previous 9 months before they were referred. So it just shows you the sheer quantity. In this slide, what I'm going to show you is the impact that we've had. So relating it back to the goals of the program, which is to reduce demand on the front line whilst increasing the well-being of that community member. We have 838 individuals that we worked with. What we saw was quite a large reduction. Now, what I really want you to focus on are the occurrences. The violations and disorder indicators, that's kind of like cop talk that you don't need to worry about. But the occurrences means contacts. So with a 25.9% reduction in contacts, that means that our community members, on average, that's what we saw, the reduction. So they're not coming to the police attention, and that's primarily because we're focusing on those unmet basic needs. I talked about taking a tiered response. We've identified there's a top 1% of community members within Edmonton that we have data on, and they commit by far the vast majority of social disorder in the city. So it's not on the slide, but I'm going to just tell you, when we started this program on January the 4th of 2021, we identified that there was approximately 458 individuals who committed over 6,500 police contacts in the previous 9 months. They by far outweighed everyone else. So we've identified those individuals, and when we have an opportunity to interact with them, we do everything we can to sign them up for full case management. Because these individuals do take so much work, we only made contact with 41 of them. But where we did work with those 41 individuals, you can see there the huge success we had with them. So again, 63.4% reduction in violations. So that's when I talk about violations, I'm talking about offences. So those could be trespassing, intoxications. They could also include criminal violations too, so theft, assault. And what's really important there as well is the occurrences, so the contacts with the police. So what we've actually seen is that when you compare the amount of contact they had prior to help to the amount they had after help, we saw that their police contacts reduced by over a half. These are some of the comments from community members of those individuals that we have worked with, and I think what you'll see here, if you can help me, it's not working, is that the positive impact we're having on our community members. You know, policing, people often think about policing as a uniform, and that's all often people see. What's really important about the help team and the work we do generally in social policing division is we want to let people see past the uniform. So just like my bio, when Panita was explaining that, you know, I come from a background in London, police in a major city. Just in the one borough I worked, there were over 1 million people. And in the whole of London, there's approximately 10 to 11 million. But the impact that we can have with those community members and the positivity that we can reflect of the EPS and show people that we're actually out there trying to do the right thing for the right reasons. Bearing in mind balancing that public safety with the social supports and social well-being. Oh, perfect. So how can we improve? I love to be efficient and as effective as we can. So at the end of 2021, we did an evaluation, what this is part of, but we include the qualitative piece. This is one aspect of that qualitative piece where we surveyed our internal membership. We asked them how we could improve. We had two major sources of feedback. One was they wanted expanded hours of operation, and two, they wanted us to be more engaged and embedded with the front line. So knowing that, what we've proceeded to do is we now work, we have 7-day-a-week coverage, so including weekends, as well as we've begun to embed our navigators with frontline patrol divisions. So right now, in downtown division, there are 2 navigators that work directly with patrol members. They go to parades with the teams, they deploy in a black and white police car, and what that allows us now is an alternative to crisis resolution. They attend, they may take calls off the board or be dispatched primarily as the responding officers. This has allowed us to have a much greater impact with our frontline to increase morale, but also to give them an extra resource in dealing with those situations. So moving forwards, where do we see? We see coordination. I can tell you in the last 18 months, having immersed myself in this work, what I have seen is a lot of duplication and probably a lack of communication between everyone involved. We see this intersectionality between justice, health, and social. And in fact, what we're trying to do right now is place help as an option in the middle of that. We've recently expanded our navigators to include a nurse from Boyle Macaulay Health Centre, as well as a nurse from George Spady. So this is allowing us now to have that health component. Accountability, and I think the previous speakers spoke about this as well, but we see accountability at every level. It starts with the funders. We fund our program, but the other funders of all the work in this area we strongly believe there needs to be accountability attached to that funding. Service providers, as well as frontline programming, we need to do a better job at communicating and sharing information and resources so we know what each other is doing. I think by doing this, we'll increase the efficiency of that. And lastly, which is something not always spoken about, but there needs to be accountability for the community members themselves. Much of this work comes down to the community member wanting to take part in it. As I've mentioned, the HELP program is a voluntary program. We can't force someone into care, and we can't force them to get the help they need. And lastly, information sharing. As I mentioned, that's going to be key in this, and we see a role for a governance within all of this work that would ensure the accountability and the coordination. So with that, that's that. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I want to pause for a second here before I introduce my next speaker, because I need to say thank you. So the person that everyone's been pointing their pointer at, the person who really made this possible, and I'm sure had many late nights in the lead up to this event, is Catherine Keel and her team. So a huge thank you to Catherine. I also want to thank my team, Alex and Jessica, put in a ton of work to make this happen as well, and to Lisa and her team. So a lot goes into something like this, and we decided to make it happen, I'm sure, as you all noted from when you got your invitations, with very short notice. And so we're grateful that you were all able to join us, and we're so grateful to our partners, and as Lisa mentioned earlier, to the City of Edmonton for helping us fund this. I'm really excited to introduce our next speaker. Our next speaker is Jordan Reiniger. I hope I'm saying your name right, Jordan. Jordan has been with Boyle Street Community Services for 5 years and was recently appointed as the new executive director. We actually both started in our roles at a similar time, so we've been on a bit of a journey together, I think, over the past year and a half. Jordan previously held the positions of Director of Programs and Development, as well as General Manager of Boyle Street Manager of Boyle Street Ventures, and brings this diverse background to his new role. Jordan lives in the Boyle Street neighborhood with his wife, Joelle, and 2 daughters, Maddie and Lucy. He holds a master's degree in poverty studies and management, but his most important lessons come from the wisdom of those in the community he is privileged to live in and serve. Welcome, Jordan. I don't know which direction. There he is. It's so dark out there.
Well, thank you, everybody. I'm glad to be here. And I just want to start by thanking Panita and Lisa for your leadership. As Panita mentioned, we started in our roles in similar times, and it hasn't been an easy time. And the resiliency and the fortitude and the strength that Panita and Lisa have shown in terms of really keeping the foot on the gas and supporting the vibrancy of our downtown moving forward in very, very difficult times has been remarkable. And so thank you for your leadership. Our city owes you both a debt of gratitude. I wanted to, when I was trying to figure out what to say, and I always have lots of things to say, but trying to focus it in on 8 minutes, I was procrastinating and I couldn't figure out what to do. And so I was at our 105th Avenue location, and I decided just to go chat with the people that I have had the honor and privilege of walking alongside and serving over these last number of years, to ask them, what does vibrancy mean to them? What does safety mean to them? What do they think about all the things that are happening in our downtown? And 2 things came out very clearly. The first, I was talking to a young man, and this is a young man who probably is having interactions with a lot of different places downtown, not always positive. And he said to me, you know, I get really frustrated when I'm told to move along because I know that I have nowhere else to go. And the messaging around mental health and addictions and not having access to adequate and appropriate places for people to be couldn't be further from the truth. People have nowhere to go. There are a few places in the community that are notable exceptions, like the Edmonton Public Library, places like Boyle Street Community Services, but ultimately people have nowhere to go. And they have nowhere to go that is appropriate for the condition that they may find themselves in. And again, these are health conditions. And I want to just say that there is nobody that I have ever talked to in my work at Boyle Street that doesn't have a different hope for their life. And there is a challenge of having access to appropriate places to go, appropriate services that will work for them, but everybody hopes something different for their life than living on the street. And so we always have to keep that in mind. So I have this picture of this building up here. So part of the solution, it's not the full solution, but is having appropriate purpose-built facilities for people to go to. This is the renderings of what is going to be our new building for Boyle Street. Our current facilities on 105th Avenue is an old banana ripening warehouse from the 1940s. And it is not an appropriate place for people to be. It's literally crumbling and flooding on a regular basis. And so this is 2 blocks away. It's 2.5 acres of land. It includes 38 units of housing. It's going to allow for beautiful, dignified outdoor space for people to go so they don't have to be on the sidewalk. It's going to allow us to purpose build the design so that we can be more effective, more efficient, and get better outcomes for people. And so we have the Build with Boyle campaign happening right now. This is made possible because of a transformative gift from the Edmonton Oilers Community Foundation of $10 million that allowed us to move forward. So this is happening, and we're hoping to begin construction in September, open in the fall of 2023. So I guess I have to say thank you to all of you who've probably spent way too much money on 50/50 tickets over the last couple of years and not one. That's helped to support this project. But this has always been about more than a building for us. There is no city, provincial, or federal money in this project. This has been about the community leading and coming together to support those that we serve. And what we've been really committed to in this project is making it a beautiful building that aligns with the value and the worth and the dignity of the people that we serve every day. They're so often told out there in society that they're valueless, they're worthless, but we know that that's not true. And so we wanted this building to be something that reflected that dignity and that worth, and the community is rallying around that. So this will be a statement to the people that we serve that they matter and that we care about them. So we're looking forward to that. The second thing that came up was really poignantly sort of articulated by one of our community members when we were talking about vibrancy and what it's like to be downtown. And she said, you know, when I have interactions with a police officer or a security guard, it's not that interaction that I'm reacting to, it's the previous 10 interactions that I'm reacting to. So I want you to imagine with me the experience of being downtown, and every single interaction you have is negative. Being perpetually told to move along, to leave, to get out, you're not welcome here. Being looked at with disdain and disgust, she's been spat at before. To be feared, to have somebody literally move across to the other sidewalk so they can avoid you, and even worse, to be completely ignored, as if you don't exist and you don't matter. Imagine if every interaction that you had was like that. And what response might you have when you run into a security guard? And so I want to propose an innovation that I think will contribute to the vibrancy of downtown. And I want us to lead institutionally and individually, first with understanding and kindness. Imagine if that individual was interacting with a security guard and not all 10 of the previous 10 interactions were negative, but what if 5 were infused with kindness and understanding? Would the outcome be different when they were interacting with police or security? I think it would be. And so I want to encourage us all, I want to challenge us all, not to look at people who are experiencing homelessness as a threat, as something to be feared, but to offer kindness, to look them in the eyes, acknowledge their humanity and their existence. I always carry a pack of cigarettes with me. I don't smoke. But that's one kindness that I can offer, is to offer a cigarette. That means a lot to somebody. Offer a cigarette or 2 or 3. Offer to buy a coffee, just a smile and a hello. And what if we were conspirators in kindness together? We tried to really proactively, as our downtown, make sure that this was a welcoming place and that people had more experiences that were positive than negative. And I think if we could do that, it would have a dramatic impact on the outcomes that we're seeing with security, with vandalism, with all those sorts of things. So that's what I want to challenge us all to. How does this look like in practice institutionally? I think I am just so grateful for the partnership we have with Sean and Damien, the City Center Mall, that empathy-led security, really taking a risk and taking a chance with doing things differently and leading with understanding and leading with kindness. So how do we do that institutionally in all of our programs and how we're interacting with the public? Our Higher Good team, which is a social enterprise where we employ people who have lived experience, who are in washrooms, like at City Center Mall, in the library, in Churchill Square. They're in our LRT stations. They're presence, their eyes on the street, but they're not a uniform. They are people who have a deep understanding because they've been there themselves, and they can offer that kindness and that support. And that's another way that people can engage with that work and provide great employment opportunities at the same time. We also do training programs called Understanding Vulnerability, and this is a teaser. We're about to launch in the next little while something called the Boyle Street Academy of Understanding, where we can do courses and training for different organizations and individuals around this. So that's my pitch, I guess, for today, is to say, for all of you, use your voices to advocate for appropriate spaces, for medically based support, for medical challenges for people. And please, let's show kindness to people. Let's offer smiles, let's offer cigarettes, let's offer coffee, even just acknowledge people's existence. And I think that will make our downtown very vibrant into the future. Thank you.
Wow, Jordan, thank you very much for that reminder that small acts do matter. And actually, just a bit of a story. I work in Epcor Tower, and I was crossing 104th Ave, heading to Epcor Tower, and there was a gentleman heading to Boyle Street, and we decided to race. So we're like running across the avenue together, and it was this incredible moment where, you know, we just connected and learned that we were from the same region in northern Alberta and that kind of thing. So, I think you've reminded me to do more of that and to just connect on that human level. So thank you. We're coming on to our last speaker, last but not least. And this person is someone who is a dear friend and mentor of mine. I moved away from Edmonton in 2015 and then moved back at the end of 2020. And I moved back to really, like all of you, I think, to be of service to the city, to be of service to our province and to each other. And this person has taught me an incredible amount about being of service. I'd like to introduce Cheryl Whiskey Jack. Cheryl is the executive director of the Bent Arrow Traditional Healing Society and has been with Bent Arrow just about since its inception over a quarter century ago. Now she oversees a suite of 21 different programs and services. The organization's programming connects Indigenous and clients to the city around them and helps them build skills and resilience that they can use in other parts of their lives. Cheryl proudly serves as a board member of the Canadian Accreditation Council of Human Services, the Align Association of Community Services, and was newly appointed to the Board of Policy-Wise for Children and Families. She has contributed to the work of End Poverty Edmonton since its inception and currently acts as co-chair of the Stewardship Roundtable. She also sits at this table for the National Advisory Council on Poverty. She acts as a mentor for the Edmonton Chamber of Voluntary Organizations Executive Director Mentorship Program and represents Bent Arrow through C5, a collaborative partnership of 5 nonprofits using innovative engagement in vulnerable neighborhoods. And this is very, very innovative, this type of collaboration. Cheryl is proud of the strong partnerships she has maintained across sectors. A graduate of the Child and Youth Care Program at Grant MacEwan University in 1995, Cheryl was recognized with a Distinguished Alumni Award in 2018. She was also recognized with an Honorary Doctorate of Laws by the University of Alberta in 2021. That same year, Cheryl was recognized as a Paul Harris Fellow by Rotary Foundation. Please join me in welcoming Cheryl.
I gotta shorten that thing. Thanks for having me out, and it really is really bright up here. I agree with everyone who said that. I'm really happy to follow my friend and colleague and C5 partner Jordan, because he actually lengthened my 8 minutes into 16 minutes with what he talked about, so I get to sort of include everything he has had to say in the comments that I'm going to be sharing with you this morning. So what I want to share with the work that we're doing in downtown to address some of the safety challenges is actually a project that came from Calgary. Last summer, we got a call from the city of Edmonton about a pilot that was showing some success in Calgary. That was a partnership with a community outreach worker and a transit police officer, and it was a way to meet people where they were at, that were experiencing some challenges in those transit centers. And the first year of COVID, my colleague Jordan, when he got approached about the winter shelter downtown, insisted that Indigenous services be a part of the services that were going to be provided in the winter shelter at the conference center, just down the road from here. Which is not something that has really ever been done. It's something that we try to squeeze into our budget lines, but he said it needs to be integral to the services that we provide at the shelter. And so we were able to be a partner there. And that was one of the reasons I think that we got approached about this work. It's called COT, Community Outreach Transit Team. We love our acronyms, if nothing else. But we call it COT. And we learned so much from that work we did at the shelter. We obviously had a heart for serving community. We always have. But one of the things that we learned was that our colleagues were also on a learning journey, and we spent a lot of time teaching our colleagues in that time in the winter shelter. And learning a lot about the challenges that were happening with people during COVID, and now that we're starting to come back to work, how amplified many of these things are. We also knew from the data that a large percentage of the people that we're encountering in this work were going to be of Indigenous heritage, and so I think that was another reason the City of Edmonton wanted us to be a part of this. So we got going last year. I brought my coworker Robbie. She's also my sister. Sorry, I have to say that. She works at Bent Arrow. We both have worked there for a long time. She's wearing a beautiful ribbon skirt, and we're going to stick around after. I brought her so that she could answer questions if people had it after we're all done this. I think we're going to be out in the lobby, so look for both of us, and we'll be there to help you. But she leads the team with COT and does it in such a good way. She has a long history of working with Bent Arrow, and one of the things that we have been known for in this community is to work in partnership. When our founders started the organization, they quickly learned, as we all learn when we are helpers, that the person that you're helping isn't an island, that they often have people around them that also need support. And so Bent Arrow has grown over the years in that way, that we are growing to provide supports to the people we're already serving. So in the spirit of partnership and all of those years of experience of what it means to work in partnership, Robbie has had that ingrained in her practice for many, many years. So one of the things that she did first that's working really well is she found a couple of really great candidates to do the work. They were both outside hires, but they were both outside hires that had a tremendous amount of experience working with the type of people we would be encountering in the work, very high needs and at-risk individuals. We also made it really clear with our partners that this really had to be embedded in the work at all levels. So we couldn't just sort of throw these two workers together and hope for the best. We really wanted our immediate leadership team to be meeting on a really regular basis, and then sort of the higher leadership team to also be meeting on a regular basis to address any of those barriers, challenges, issues that come forward as we started working together. The other thing that we insisted, excuse me, was that we embed our practice model at Bentero, very similar to what Jordan spoke about before me, is providing those trainings and teachings about Indigenous people, about our worldview, and doing those together with the people that were going to be working in COTS, so the transit police officer and the community outreach worker, doing those trainings together, but also having their leadership involved in those as well. Examples of those would be the Indigenous teachings that we give, and those are mandatory for all staff in the organization, but also blanket exercise. I was able actually to participate in the blanket exercise for the COT team, and it was very impactful. I've been through it many, many times, but for some of the folks that were our partners, they had never had that experience. So it really was a dot connector for people who were the peace officers, the dot connector in knowing that these people that we're working, that we're seeing out there that are very vulnerable, didn't end up there by accident. And like Jordan said, nobody aspires to be in that situation in their life, that really there were things that happened that got them to that place. And then right now, I'm dressed the way I am because it's Indigenous History Month, I think it's called. Yeah. And we are holding a culture camp, like just maybe a kilometer or two up the road by the stadium at our main office, which is the old Parkdale School. And so if you have time today, drive by, because it's really kind of cool to see a teepee village in the center of the city of Edmonton. And we just snuck away from there to be here with you today. So the COT team also participated in that. The other thing, which we learned at Tepinawao and we're learning here as well, is the potential for capacity building. So just by spending all of this intentional time together, we're building capacity in our partners within the peace officer work. And there's a lot of excitement that's been generated. And what I'm hearing from Robbie is that there are other TPOs in the organization that are really wanting to be a part of this work. The good news is we are going to be growing excuse me, by 5 more COT teams. We presently only have 2, so the blanket's very thin. They're very busy, but by the end of this summer, we're hoping to have 5 more out there, and so the blanket will be able to cast a wider net out there. And so there's a lot of excitement within the ranks to be a part of this, and even with only the 2, there was a lot of interest from other transit police officers, we say TPOs, to be doing like relief. So when there was holidays or sick days, people who could come and step in and do that work. What is not working? Some of the challenges that we have experienced, and it's not the first time because we do work in partnership historically, is in this partnership, the community organization, which is Bentero, is not unionized, and our partners are. And so we can be really nimble as a community organization and just sort of get things done and make changes as we need to. But there's like the bureaucracy requires time and inclusion on some of these decisions that we're making. And so sometimes it's a little bit, I get a little bit impatient trying to get things going that we know we need to change. And I would even say our partners in this from that bureaucracy are also frustrated by how much time it takes to get decisions up and down the chain so that we can try and be as nimble as we can. Scaling up in a good way, I think I'm hearing this on the news, has been a challenge, especially in the human services sector. There is a lot of work out there. We have a lot of vacancies at our organization, and so finding those good people to be able to do the work is something that I think many of my colleagues in the sector are experiencing. We're always like help wanted sign is up all the time. And I think, some of the challenges that we're having in this sector have caused people to look in other sectors for work. Bad publicity has been a challenge. It's really hard for me to turn on the evening news, and I'm not suggesting by any stretch that what I'm seeing on there isn't happening, but it's heavily biased to create a sense of fear, like Jordan says, where you go to the other side of the sidewalk because you don't know what's happening. And I'm not suggesting people be cavalier about safety, but it is only one side of the story. And so we have been very intentional about getting out there and trying to tell like the human side of the story. That just by acknowledging someone's humanity and presence, we have been able to start conversations with people and really do some like amazing work. It's never sort of a one-shift deal, so you don't encounter someone and get them some supports and then never see them again. What's happening with many of the folks that we're serving is that we're starting that interaction, sometimes by saying hello 2, 3, 4 times before they start seeing you as someone that maybe wants to help them. And then when they start talking about the things that they hope for, that's when we can start looking for those services. So we're hanging on to people for weeks. And checking in and moving the ball a little bit further down the field each time. And if you come see us in the break, we'll tell you some of those stories, but I only have 8 minutes. One of the things that's a concern for me, which I just added, is the bylaw that came in the news last week around loitering. That has a real concern for us in the work. That again, we're criminalizing poverty, and I worry about the impact that'll have on some of the people that we're serving. What else? Okay, I already talked about that. Okay, so ideas where we can do things differently. This is my last talking point. And everybody went over, and it's been really great to hear the speakers that have come before me. And what I'll suggest is that they've all had really good ideas, and I will say that those are all things that we should explore. But I will also wager that they are all very present interventions that we have heard this morning. And what I'm going to suggest, my big ask, is that we go way back, not to what we're seeing today, but go back to what caused folks to be in this very precarious, sad situation today. Whenever I hear these acts of violence on the news, one of the very first things I wonder, and I'm usually like 99% of the time right, I wonder if it's an Indigenous person that perpetrated that terrible act. And what happened in Chinatown a few weeks ago, I had that same wondering, and I didn't have to wonder long, because they named Justin Bone on the news and have been naming him every day. Every day I hear about him. So I was right. I didn't want to be right, but I was. The second question I wonder once I find out if they were Indigenous, and again, I'm usually always sadly right, is was this person raised in government care? And I'm usually right. And Justin Bone was raised in government care. So somewhere in his life, someone said he is at risk living with his people, and removed him from them and placed him with people who were paid to care for him until he was the age of 18. And I'll say 18 because he's old enough to be a part of a system where we cut kids off at that age. And then he probably was 18, probably didn't have any ID on him, probably didn't have any of those rites of passage that our kids enjoy, like a learner's permit or a driver's license or a job at the mall, like those kinds of things. So he was out there trying to survive. Many of the kids that we serve historically, I've been there since 1995 at Bentero, they're either some of those folks that we heard about this morning. One of my old kids finally He's almost 40. Finally exhausted every couch, every good relationship he had out there, and now he's sleeping out rough, almost 40 years old, and sleeping under a tarp. So like Jordan, I walk around with a few bucks in my wallet, and I never drive around downtown without looking for this guy. Because if I find him, I want to make sure that he gets a meal in him, or something, that he's okay. So my bold ask is that we go back and look at those things. But again, we live in a right now society where we want to fix the problem right now today. But I would suggest that what we're dealing with today happened 15, 20 years ago. And if we start making changes in those areas, and there are ways to make changes in those areas, that we'll start to see some changes in what we're seeing in society today. So that's what I wanted to share with you all. Thank you for having me. Thanks, Panita, and thanks, Lisa. All right. Good. Be over there.
Thank you so much, Cheryl, for encouraging us to think long-term and to pause. What an incredible morning of presenters. It's really encouraging that so many of you came out for this. I do want to thank the team here at the Citadel. They've been roaming about and just making everything work smoothly for us. So thank you very much for that. And soon you'll break and have some delicious food from our phenomenal caterer too. So hope you enjoy that, and thanks to them. This was a bit of a format that we're experimenting with, so kind of rapid fire presentations. You notice that there was no time for questions, but the hope is that you really will reach out to speakers, get to know more about the work that they're doing, and hopefully for those who are able to stay, you can connect with them out in the foyer. Also in the foyer, as we mentioned, there's a speaker's corner set up. And this is the old school. I get to talk about the old school tool, and Pudina talks about the modern cool one. But Speaker's Corner, like Much Music, you can go and stand and be videoed and share your thoughts about what we've heard this morning, any ideas you have moving forward. We will be pulling together digital and written what we heard to send back to you, to send to governments, to really help us form the basis of the next summit that we hope to do as well, and keep the conversation and the solutions and ideas flowing. So now I'll turn it over to Panita to talk about the cool tool.
Thanks, Lisa. The Speaker's Corner is pretty cool. I'm really excited that we're doing that. You might be a little nervous approaching the camera, but it's just you and the camera, and really, I can't promise you no one else will see it, but we'll see it, and then a lot of other people might see it. So please do take the time to share, because your voices, all of you, are really, really important to this work. And Q&A, I think, would have stretched this out a little bit too long, but that's a good opportunity. The other really good opportunity is Mentimeter. So on your way out for the break, we're going to break right now. If you can't scan it from your seat, feel free to just come up closer and scan that code, or just go to the URL there and enter that code. So there's 3 questions there when you get to Mentimeter. So we're going to come back in the room, and there's going to be 3 questions for you to answer. 2 questions for you to answer, and 1 space for you to ask us questions. So we're going to go to the break right now. Again, encourage you to grab a snack, some breakfasty bites from Hallway Cafe. Go to the Speaker's Corner if you're feeling brave, and if you've got something to say. Chat with some of our speakers. Hopefully many of them, if not all of them, are able to stick around for at least a little bit. And then we'll see you back here. So Lisa and I are going to be between 2 ferns, and hopefully able to answer some of your questions and share a lot more about what each of us is doing and what we hope to accomplish with the partners that you heard from today going forward. Oh, timing. So see you back here at 11:15.
So we actually held this event in the Windspear, right next door. And Janice Abbott from Atira Women's Society came to Edmonton to talk to us about the innovative housing development that Atira was working on in Vancouver's downtown east side. So the reason I'm showing this video is a reminder to all of you of the innovative bricks and mortar projects that are out there, to reinforce that Intentional, well-designed, well-serviced spaces are important for safety and healing of individuals who are living in them, of their families, and of the community at large. It's also a reminder of a lot of innovative things that are happening outside of Edmonton that we can learn from. And we're doing a lot of innovative things here that we can also share. So that exchange between jurisdictions is really important. So I hope that you are inspired by this project, as inspired as I am. So we'll just show it here and more people will be coming in, I think.
Now, Janice Abbott joins us from Vancouver via Calgary, where she just spoke at a social enterprise conference about Atira, an organization that provides housing and support to women. In 2010, she was named the Social Entrepreneur of the Year by Ernst & Young. Janice will talk to us about a place we all know, even if we've never been there before, Vancouver's downtown east side, and a housing project that could change everything. Janice Abbott.
So now I wish I'd had another beer. There's a lot of you out there. Atira Women's Resource Society is a women's anti-violence organization. I'm a social worker. I'm not a designer or an architect or a planner. We work across the Lower Mainland. We manifest our mandate primarily through providing supported housing to women and children. We have a big presence in the downtown east side of Vancouver. The downtown east side of Vancouver, as probably many of you know, is a community that's under pressure. It's under pressure from developers. It's slowly gentrifying. It's the lowest income neighborhood in Vancouver. It's full of an amazing group of people, but it also is full of predators. So we deal on a daily basis with women who are struggling with substance use. We deal with dealers. We deal with violence. We work at bringing women and children back together with their children, women back together with their children. United We Can, is this block of Hastings, is probably one of the most notorious blocks in the downtown east side. Our women are regularly assaulted and raped in the alleys behind that building, and typically because they are indebted to drug dealers and often required to enforce on behalf of drug dealers. So our goal, many of our women are homeless. They're struggling with substance use. They're struggling with mental and spiritual wellness. They're struggling with poverty. They're in and out of homelessness. And our goal is to get them housed, get them off the street and get them housed and get them into housing that's not only affordable but safe and where they can create communities of support with each other. We work with a disproportionate number of Aboriginal women. We work with women who are a bit older because women who are older are a bit more ready to settle down, more ready, good grammar. We do, like I say, intentional housing, women-only housing. We have supports on site. We dispense medication. We operate within harm reduction principles, so we're not requiring women to stop what they're doing, but rather we support them to make different choices, or we create opportunities or space for them to be able to make different choices in their lives if they want to. This is one of our buildings in the downtown east side. That's right in the heart of the downtown east side. In 2010, I'm going to talk about the container housing, obviously. In 2010, we bought a piece of property that's on sort of the eastern edge of the downtown east side. We bought a building, a 24-unit single-room accommodation hotel, and it came with a 25-foot wide by 17 feet long infill lot, and we had to decide what we were going to do with it. And so we decided we were going to use containers. We received a couple of containers from BC Hydro. They'd done a Home of the Future, a demonstration project during the Olympics. We bought 10 more containers from the Port of Vancouver. We shipped them on a flatbed truck out to a shipping yard in Steveston, which is in Richmond, just south of Vancouver, where they were modified. So modified is sort of what they're looking like there. We had the doors and windows and space between the two containers cut out. We cut out the fronts and the backs so that we could put in curtain wall glazing. And we dropped them with a crane on site between two heritage buildings. So that's what they look like. They were dropped on site. We prepared the foundation. We used concrete-filled foam foundation. The containers were dropped and they were stacked like they would be at sea. So they were spot welded and then just spot welded between the floors. So they required no additional support. Containers are surprisingly sturdy. So we got them on site and then we sequentially tendered the project. So we brought the trades in. What you can see there is the spray foam insulation. We brought in the plumbers, the mechanical team, put up the wet walls, fought with the City of Vancouver Code Department all the way through, although we did end up meeting or exceeding code in every way. We tried to make the building fit in with the neighborhood, so you'll see we tried to keep it as best we could, sort of a similar height to the buildings on either side. It's stuck between two heritage buildings, or what in Vancouver are heritage buildings. They were both built in 1912. The building went up in about 6 months, so it was a 3-year project, but the biggest difficulty in the project was working with the city to try and get it built. Here's a picture of the finished project. You can see the curtain wall glazing up and down. It's a bit expensive. It was relatively speaking, they were $82,500 a unit, hard construction costs, and that's because of the site constraints. The building, like I say, went up in about 6 months, and that's part of the savings, obviously, is the quick time in which they were built. We used some cladding. You'll see some cedar cladding on the side, but tried to keep the long ends looking like containers. This will be an intentional community. That's a community garden. There's 2 buildings with a courtyard in between, and we are doing an intentional community with the building next door, where there are 18 young women. So these are young women who have lived in the downtown east side, some of them since they were 11, 12, and have been homeless. The buildings were finished in July. We had a really successful month of August where we had probably more than 3,000 people wander through them. This is one of the staged units. They're 290 square feet net living area. So they're all studio apartments. They'll house older women who will work in an intergenerational mentorship program. This is the unit where you're living in containers, and you can see the Port of Vancouver and look at containers all day. And it actually is the most popular unit that we had. That was the easiest one to rent. We're working on our second project. It'll be bigger. We're going 8 stories, which means it'll require an elevator. We're just going through the rezoning. So we had our first scoping meeting with the City of Vancouver. The women started moving in at the beginning of September. It's a mixed housing, so we have 6 subsidized units and 6 units that are renting at market rental. So that unit there rents for $850 a month, which in Vancouver actually is a subsidized unit. It'll be filled up by the end of this month. There's a couple of women who have been there since mid-August, and they're absolutely loving it. They love the design. We did a lot of things here that we wouldn't typically do in non-market housing, and I'm finished.
So she had exactly 6 minutes and 20 seconds to tell her story and talk about the project. So I think she did a phenomenal job. And that was several years ago. But again, just wanted to show that to remind everyone that we do want to move forward with intention with the projects that we're working on, and to encourage you to continue to be innovative. So I'm now going to sit over here, and I think we're going to answer some questions.
Mic's on. Can everyone hear me? Yes, okay. Thank you for that, Lisa. That's like that kind of innovation, I think. We're seeing more and more of it in Edmonton, but it's never enough. So we have a bunch of ideas up on the board. I'm just gonna read some of these really quickly. Mitigate houselessness. I think we all have come to an understanding that that's an essential part of the solution here. As I think one of the speakers today said, we can't house our way out of our current challenges downtown alone, because the supportive.
We can't house our way up. Is this thing on?
I think so.
Is it? Can you hear me? Yeah, I didn't think so. Okay.
Having family-friendly parks and encouraging the apartment buildings to also have this sort of spaces. So that's actually one thing I wanted to talk about. So what we didn't. We called this the Safety and Vibrancy Summit, but most of today was really focused on the safety piece and sort of housing and mental health and addictions and services. And so just to talk briefly about the vibrancy piece of that, There's a lot of work happening there. And so it's sort of like, probably the trickiest thing about my job, not that this is at all about me, but just working between these two worlds of one being this really positive sort of like marketing entity for downtown and putting on events. We just had a really, really successful 10 days doing Downtown Spark. We're starting Al Fresco on 104th Street next week. No, this coming weekend. This Saturday is our first Saturday on 104th Street, which is something that Community League had been doing for the last couple of years, and we're taking on. So doing all of that stuff, but also spending time with Boyle Street Community Services and EPS and City Council and having a terrifying experience going to speak to the Police Commission last week and share some of our concerns. And so it's walking this line between the very real, and Cheryl, I think, put it really well. Are you going to stand up here? Okay. I'll just look at you this way. What Cheryl was saying in her presentation about, we need to go way back. We need to talk about the root causes and the underlying issues underpinning what we're experiencing downtown. But we live in a right here, right now world, but we don't have a choice. I know there's people in this room today who, despite all of our efforts for vibrancy, despite all of our efforts to market our businesses, to bring customers in, to have public spaces, to activate our parks, all of these things, you also have staff who have been assaulted verbally and physically. You have these very real, very immediate challenges that I assume you're here looking for answers and solutions to. So that sort of like constant push and pull and tension between knowing how complicated things are, knowing how much of this is long-term and requires a heavy lift from all orders of government, but also knowing we don't have a lot of time in some cases, and it is really immediate.
No, you're absolutely right. I think we've been talking a lot, and especially at BOMA, about that balance between short-term and long-term, and how do we find that, and what is the sweet spot for collaboration? Because we all have to lend a hand, private sector, public sector, nonprofit, and social service providers. And so determining what that looks like, I think, has been tricky. And I know in my work advocating and engaging and developing partnerships on safety and vibrancy downtown, I'm always a little leery if somebody comes to the table and says, the solution is this, because it's such a complex situation that we're in. And I think we learned that here today, that there is no silver bullet, and we really have to come together in spaces like this, first of all, learn from each other, so we don't duplicate, so that we're using resources efficiently, so that we're really coming to the table and getting to know each other to build trust. That's really important, because again, the only way we're going to move forward is if we are engaging. And there again, I think small acts, big acts, short term, long term, we've really got to go at it at all levels. And I know in our communications with the city and with the province, there was a lot of the work that we do isn't public. A lot of it is behind the scenes, learning from government officials where they're at, how we can work together, really trying to drive towards solutions. Sometimes, because there is division, I will say that, moving away from Edmonton and then coming back, that's something that I've noticed. So on the one hand, there's this hopeful collaboration, and then on the other hand, there's some division and tense relationships. So navigating that can be pretty tricky, and sometimes our role, even as industry, is just to bring the other person or the other government or whatever it is to the table. And so that's what we try and focus on.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not going to read too many more of these, but I think, the next one. Thank you, Catherine. So what's an action that individual Edmontonians can take to support downtown safety and vibrancy? It's as simple as coming back, spending time downtown. I obviously, very biased, can't echo that strongly enough. The difference it makes, for the 10 days we were doing Downtown Spark, our counters were really just for the actual spaces, like the parks that we were activating. We had thousands of people coming down every day, and I hadn't, probably in a year and a half, honestly, had more positive comments and messages social media mentions, about downtown over that time, just because there were so many people around, and there was, things to look at and things to do, and there's more families than I've seen downtown in the last 2 years, other than, I think, while Taste of Edmonton was happening, because they were the only festival that happened last year. So I can't obviously endorse that message. I didn't write that, but yes, coming
Presence,
downtown.
presence, right? I think that's what Sean and Damien really highlighted, was the importance of presence. And if we do want downtown to thrive, then we have to make the effort to come down here to work, to have some fun, to see some of the amazing cultural assets that we have here, and entertainment assets. So that's really key. And the other thing I can say is, we're obviously, as BOMA, we represent office tower owners and managers, and we've been talking a lot about the future with flex work, and the fact that exists, and a lot of employers are encouraging that sort of arrangement with their employees. And we are in a talent crunch, so really seeking people to come to our companies and work. And so you have to incentivize, right? But in our conversations with governments, we understand that they're offering flex work as an option for their employees, and that's fine. But what we're saying is, how can you encourage then those employees to come back to your spaces? How are you designing them? What amenities? What other kinds of incentives? Because 40% of our office space in downtown Edmonton is government. So if that 40% isn't present, what happens to vibrancy? Just the day-to-day, the social interactions, the sub that you buy at the local shop, right? So we are talking to all levels of government, and really trying to partner with them and encourage them to get as many of their people back to the office as they can, in whatever that looks like. So my line is always, public servants should be in the public serving. I don't know. Anyway, I thought it was clever.
Well, that actually is part of the answer to this question that we got. I want to hear thoughts about the role of other orders of government, the role other orders of government play in downtown vibrancy. So that is a big part of it, what you were just saying, making sure that the province, because I know the city's plan. I know the city has all of their employees back in the office a minimum of 2 days a week. I don't know that answer from the provincial government or the federal government. Some departments are back in some capacity, others are not back at all. Canada Place, outside of the passport office, is really quite empty. And some chuckles about the passport situation. And so many of the tenants of your members are provincial agencies and provincial departments. So really getting those people back in the office is a big part of it.
Well, and you're right. And so one initiative that both Panita and I are involved in is the Edmonton Metro Region Economic Recovery Working Group. It's quite a mouthful, but it was struck by Minister Schweitzer of Jobs, Economy and Innovation to bring together diverse industry folks to look at with the region and downtown as its hub, what is the vision? Like, let's think bold, let's provide 4 to 5 strong recommendations to the province for our economic future. Of course, that's tied to social and cultural and all kinds of things. And there's a big piece of that will be focused on downtown. And Calgary, of course, some of you have probably read this report, came out with their core report. It was exclusively focused on downtown. And that report was presented to Minister Schweitzer and his colleagues. And so our report is coming out in, I think, July or August. And we're really talking to Calgary already about where is the overlap with what's happening in your downtown and ours, and how can we jointly work with the province on those issues? Because, if we can come to the table as the 2 major cities, then that's helpful, right? It's certainly helpful. We know there's a lot going on at the provincial level right now. So we're just trying to make sure that we're talking to as many people as we possibly can, and putting downtown on their radar. And I think that's the key piece, is putting it on their radar and then looking at how we can work together.
Yeah, and one of our loudest messages to the province has been that this involves so many ministries, like almost all of the ministries, like really. And so often you'll get the attention of one ministry and they say, how can you help? And you say, you can't. Like our working group that we're working on is out of Minister Schweitzer's office for jobs, economy, and innovation. But most of what we actually need to talk to them about and most of the solutions we need to see, like we've all learned here today, are actually in the areas of health. And then there's an associate ministry of mental health and addictions, housing, like all of this stuff is what we really need, because we're here doing the work on the ground. All of you as the business community are here doing the work to build a great downtown. We can't do that without the jurisdictions that those ministries hold being fulfilled, like without the mental health supports, and that actually answers the second question here too. I keep coming back to mental health and mental illness again and again and again. Every conversation we have with the province, with the city, so much of this is about jurisdiction, and truly health falls into provincial jurisdiction. But I thought that video was really interesting. It's American context, but he talks about a federal program where the federal government is transferring funds, and I don't know if it's grants or how it works there, but they're transferring money to states who are restoring that capacity and rebuilding the capacity to deal with people who are, to care for people who are suffering from severe mental illness. That's something that, we're having conversations with the federal government too, and I'm often at a bit of a loss as to what to ask from the federal government. We've had a ton of grant funding. So I think we had a total of 600,000, if not more, last year alone, just for programming and events and activating public space. And we accessed the tourism relief fund this year. So the money's flowing from the federal government on the vibrancy side, but there's probably a lot more that could be done on the federal government side on the safety front, and whether that's health transfers to the provinces, whether that's how they're supporting Indigenous communities and housing and services directly to Indigenous communities, because that's federal jurisdiction, and a lot of times that gets forgotten. And we need to hold them accountable to that as well, because a lot of this comes down to gaps in what is available and what kind of care folks can get in their own community. Oh, more questions coming in. What is being done to help suburbanites understand all of the work and teams that is happening and combat negative perceptions?
Who wants to join a marketing campaign? Yeah, that's such a valid question. And it's not just suburbanites. Like I'll say, so I'm from, I've already said, like from northern Alberta, and so is Penita actually. And, the downtown's got a bit of a negative rap rate now, and lots of people are avoiding it unless the Oilers are in the playoffs. But that's unfortunate, because once they do go downtown, I think they remember, oh, this is vibrant, this is fun, this is okay. I want to come for dinner here. I want to have a date night, do whatever, right? Take my family. And so I think we have to shift the narrative a little bit and really talk about some of the positive things that are happening, and encourage suburbanites and ruralites, if that's the word, to come out. I think one of the things, honestly, I'll say that people from this region, and you might have something to add to this, Penita, is they actually are more concerned about construction and navigating their way through downtown and parking and that kind of thing. So that's another way that we can address that.
Yeah, actually, 630 Ched, to their credit, has been doing a series they're calling the Safe City series, and I think it's, I don't want to say it's working, because I don't know what their goal was, but they've had a lot of different speakers come on and talk about, I think Jordan went on from Boyle Street, I went on, someone from EPS went on, and so they're doing kind of in like a media way, sort of what we tried to do here. They're trying to educate, I think, the broader city and the surrounding area about all this work. So I think more of that is really important and necessary, but I struggle with it, because to your point, like, there's people who have their frustrations with coming downtown, and whether it's parking or navigating or whether it is safety, and some of them are legitimate, valid experiences. Someone might have had a negative experience. We have extremely limited resources, like for us as the EDBA, and so I have to focus on our target audience, and that is people who are supportive of downtown, want to come down and experience events, want to come support our businesses, probably already work downtown. So we do everything we can within that realm, but again, within extremely limited resources, I feel sometimes like we're just like, throwing sand into the wind if we're trying to convince everyone out there, regardless of their current perception, if we're trying to convince everyone that downtown is a magical place, because it's not for everyone. And that's kind of like a journey that I've been on to come to terms with that, because you can waste a lot of energy trying to convince people of something that they might never come around to. And unfortunately, it becomes politicized sometimes too, which is something that I think we need to really stay away from.
Well, I think, and so this question ties into the previous one around, anyway, there was something about headlines. So I was just going to say, it's important to get the work that you're doing in the headlines. Like I'm sure here today you learned about some truly innovative projects and this incredible work that people are doing, and often we're just not talking about it enough. And so, if you are doing something, I know you're in the work, but take the time to maybe get it out there, and that way others will hear that there is some good stuff happening. And yeah, are there challenges? Absolutely. Are there lots of people working on them? Absolutely. So, we have to, again, it's all about balance and making sure that that those stories are communicated.
And I think, in this question about employee groups from various organizations, like what can you do? I think a lot of it's about being ambassadors. I hope that a lot of people that were here today learned a lot of new things that you can take away and share. So how much can you share that within your organization, right up to leadership? Can you convince your leadership, especially if it's a large corporate entity that might have a lot of sway with the provincial government, how might you be able to leverage your organization's voice to make sure that these issues are being escalated and elevated, and maybe they're willing to write a letter or meet with the minister or take on a bigger role? Because that's what we're finding is this critical mass of the business community coming together and asking for the same things, and all rowing in the same direction is actually starting to make a difference, and starting to see some of the funding and policy changes that we need to see.
And even just from a small act perspective, get out of the office and go for lunch. Be out there. We're planning a few cleanup downtown and all around days, so we can just come together and celebrate. Taste of Edmonton is coming, festivals. So, employee groups can get out that way, and friend groups, families too.
Can an intergovernmental role or office facilitate terms and conditions excerpts that different levels of government can use to enable a uniform strategy across federal, provincial, and municipal contractors? Well, that would be amazing.
That'd be amazing. Yeah.
I don't know who wrote that, but...
That's really smart.
Sorry, yeah, was that you?
That's my question.
Yeah.
And it seems to be the light bulb solution that's staring us in the face year on year. We talk about a uniform problem, we talk about uniform solutions. However, all of our money and all of our activity is assigned to our private sector hiring for this 40% occupancy of Edmonton. So there isn't new money to handle the problem necessarily, because it's already been committed to a 5-year plan to the lowest bidder. However, if an intergovernmental role could look at the capability and reach of federal, provincial, municipal, and maybe create a boilerplate template that can fit in all of their types of statement of work or RFP that includes, say, one particular focus item that really could be applied across the province. Then you're not only going to build an awareness and a value for that type of work within all of those contracts, but a specialization in public service contractors, which is where all of this is headed.
Yeah, fascinating. Because that's just it. There's this sort of power struggle between levels of government. There's changing policies and priorities with the changing of the winds. And then each service provider has slightly different mandates, slightly different priorities, slightly different way of taking on challenges. It's so true. Coordination and alignment is one of the biggest gaps here.
We're hoping maybe starts that a little bit, right? Like there's a long way to go between this and something like that, but
It'll be in the What We Heard report.
BOMA itself is a template for that. As BOMA requirements have become de rigueur at the provincial, federal, and municipal levels, and large contractors have become specialists
Yeah.
for that reason.
interesting. We will talk later. Okay, great.
Thanks for that. How do we open up businesses to be more front-facing and open to the streets? So much of downtown is closed off. That's so true. It's one of my biggest pet peeves for sure, walking around downtown. Part of the challenge is so much of our downtown was built at a time when inward-facing retail was like, you know, the style of the day, right? We have our pedway system, we have an interior-facing Edmonton City Centre shopping center, and others. Like, they're not the only ones. There's a lot of interior-facing buildings and shop fronts, and so there's a lot of investment capital coming into Edmonton. Some of it obviously was affected by COVID and the situation we're currently in, but a lot of that capital is directed at exactly that change, making investments to renovate these buildings, to turn them inside out. And this is part of the here and now, because what I'm hearing is that a lot of that investment money is not so enthusiastic about Edmonton because of some of the challenges we're currently facing around safety and social disorder. So it's this like, it's not simple on either end of this equation. So I'm hoping there's more of that coming. I'm hearing promising things, I'm sure you are too, about how that capital's coming in and when some of those big renovations can be expected. But it's this chicken and egg thing. Like, that investment comes when they see a really exciting and vibrant downtown, and a really exciting and vibrant downtown requires some of that investment and that renovation. So the city is doing some things around construction grants and facade improvement grants and some of those things. But I think the more we're all nudging in the same direction, the more of that really great work we're going to see.
That was a great response. I don't even feel like I have to add to that.
Are there any governing bodies collecting results from past and present initiatives resulting from funding? If so, are those findings critiqued by Edmontonians to mitigate replication? That's a really good question. I think we'll probably take that one away.
Yeah, I think so. The one thing that I'll say is part of the reason why we invited, say, Jordan and Cheryl to come and speak is because, you would think maybe those two entities would compete a lot, but they've actually been collaborating for decades. And a lot of the service providers are collaborating, and that's not something that a lot of us know about. So the more we can learn about collaboration and the outcomes that they're held to for their funding, I think is what I'm understanding that question is about. So we're happy to learn more and inform you of those outcomes and how the funding is tied to those.
So I think Catherine has given us our cue.
We're done.
That was the last question. I want to thank you all again, all of you who stuck around through the whole morning. I know that was a lot of information. A lot of it was one-way information, but thank you so much for your inputs, for your questions and ideas. As Lisa mentioned, we'll be capturing all that. And then if you haven't already, please do consider spending a minute or two in front of the camera and the mic at the speaker's corner, because all those inputs are really valuable to us. I'm not sure if the gentleman who asked that last question we just talked to went in front of the speaker's corner, but that would be awesome if you're willing to do that, so that we can collect some of this and compile it together and use it in our work going forward as we work with all these partners that you've heard from today and all three levels of government.
Yeah, and I'll just add, please reach out to us. I think we only scratched the surface of some of the projects that we're working on, and I would really like to learn from you about what you're working on and see what we can come up with. I think the intent is to do something like this in the future and build upon what we've learned here today. So again, just stay in touch with all the networks and reach out. We do have a draw. So there's a $100 gift certificate here from Sorrentino's and these beautiful tumblers that a local designer made. And you can see inside there's a shape of the Columbia ice fields, I guess. So someone is going to take these items home. Anita, if you could. Thank you.
I'll just read it.
For those of you who stuck around.
Okay, does everyone have your raffle tickets ready to go? I feel like I'm at a fair or something. Great. 823-6709.
That's me. I'm going to donate it to Benzero Society for their fundraising purposes.
Okay, all right.
Great, thank
Perfect.
you. Awesome.
Thanks, James.
Thanks very much, everyone. Have a great rest of your day. Take care.